Welcome to Rooted to Thrive, conversations to elevate our humanity. I'm your host, Rochelle Peterson-Ansari, Professor P for short. This is your podcast sanctuary for cultivating mindsets and skills to elevate our shared humanity. We're taking a deep dive into practical strategies to evolve as anti-racist, culturally competent, and inclusive individuals and leaders. In each episode, we're bringing you real-world examples and actionable takeaways. We're going to talk about personal growth, fostering connection, and creating positive change that dismantles systemic barriers and creates environments where all of us are valued, empowered, and activate our collective power. This is Rooted to Thrive. Hey, everybody out there, welcome and welcome back to another episode of Rooted to Thrive, conversations that elevate our humanity podcast. I'm your host, Rochelle Peterson-Ansari, aka Professor P, and I am so happy, so happy to having you all join me today, and for our guest, Dr. Ranelli Williams. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Ranelli. She is a certified public accountant, certified CFO, and profit strategist. She's a financial advocate and just teaching Christian professionals and entrepreneurs how to integrate faith, family, and fortune to lead ethically in business and in life while creating generational impact. Ooh, I can't wait to talk about that. And she's an author and speaker, just passionate about financial literacy, stewardship, and wealth building tools for our empowerment and equity. What I love is that I first was introduced by to Ranelli by one of my business coaches, right? And so we get connected that way. I think she was giving a presentation on one of his weekly meetings. And I was just drawn to this person. I was in the market for a new accountant. My accountant was retiring, and I interviewed 3 people. And I was drawn by this person who was like, I don't want to just, take your money and see you at tax time and really focus on like managing the accounting that I didn't know. She was actually interested in me learning, improving my financial literacy, and the strategy for profiting. And so I was drawn to this person, and I didn't know she was, had this passion for Christians having ethical business practices. But let me tell you, I have been blessed by her purpose in that area as a financial advocate. So, Ranelli, how are you doing today?
I am great, Rochelle. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on your podcast today. I can't wait for the conversation.
That's awesome. 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 Well, our topic today is financial stewardship, a pathway to equity and empowerment. And I love this because, most people think we're going to talk about, education. Well, this is a form of education as well, but some of the high level, conversations that we have and not talk about practical things that impact our daily lives. And I'm always excited to talk to people about practical steps people can take. And they may not even associate equity and empowerment with our financial stewardship. So I'm glad to have this unique conversation. And if you would just get us started by sharing a little bit about your background and how you got involved in this work.
Yeah, so you already read my bio, right? So I won't
Mhm.
go over, that again, but what I want to just share is, I was brought up in a Christian environment, right? From day one. And so I've always centered my life and my business and my purpose around um, biblical principles. And so one of the things that um, stood out for me and made me go on this path was, my own upbringing, my dad, being a professional, he was a pharmacist
Mm.
and then eventually became a business owner. He decided, I'm going to start a bakery, right? And that was 40 years ago, 40 plus years ago. And I grew up in that environment. I grew up just, seeing all the things. And instead of being in the back where
Mhm.
some of my sisters were baking, I was
Mhm.
actually in the front on the cash register. It was just, like a natural thing for me. So I knew early on that I was going to go in somewhere in the area of finances, business ownership. Didn't know exactly what the path was. My path led me to an accounting degree,
Mhm.
and then eventually into entrepreneurship as an accountant, right? So that's kind of, my background. And along the way, one of the key things that really solidified my love for financial empowerment is I was part of an organization called NABA, National Association of Black Accountants. And, in that organization, I got pulled into the financial empowerment um, um, division, let's just call it
Mhm.
that, right? Where we were in New York City at the time, and we, just traveled throughout New York City in different areas, just teaching financial empowerment. And I enjoyed doing that. And so, that's part of my background.
Oh, that's fantastic. And now, were you educating just everyday folks, just accountants, or
So it
business
wasn't
owners? Mhm.
accountants. So we went into like marginalized communities,
Okay.
and a lot of times the invitation was through churches or social organizations where we just went in and, was able to just teach people about money management. We did it with a lot with students as well.
Mm.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And we've talked about this a little. I didn't know that about your background, so that's exciting to hear. So many different pathways to empowerment, right? And pathways to equity. You went into marginalized communities, and obviously that was a part of the mission for that organization, and it lit you out up inside. And you said, I
Yes.
need to do more of this. Yes. I love it. I love it. I want anybody that chooses a profession to be lit up inside about serving others and serving communities and helping lift up communities, especially, with more knowledge,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
I realized that about me. And when you said that, I don't know if you realized that you said it in your intro about me and how we met. And one thing that you said that I jotted down was she's interested in her clients learning. And, I never really thought of it that way, but when you said it, I said yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she said that correctly. I am interested in my clients learning. I love teaching. So I build that into what I do.
That's right. Yes, wonderful. Now, we've talked in the past about, the leaders, the people who are listening, leaders, educators, healthcare professionals, and their lack of financial literacy tools. I'm curious about your perspective on that, right? Like how do the financial literacy tools help empower them? Help them create opportunities, close wealth gaps.
Yeah, I would definitely say, one thing I would say is that many marginalized communities lack access to financial education, right? Which creates barriers
Mhm.
to economic mobility. And so as leaders, right, if we are empowered with if we empower ourselves, with becoming financially literate, with really embracing financial management, then we can pass that on to the people who we serve,
Right.
right? Then we would be first of all, let's just talk about the impact on us ourselves, right? In terms of just being less stressed out,
Mhm.
being feeling empowered because we are empowered
Mhm.
financially. And then, we're able to then understand the people who we serve who may not be in the position that we are because they didn't learn. Nobody, nowadays I find that schools are starting to teach financial literacy,
Mhm.
but back in the day, I know in my day it was not taught.
Right.
And so, just being exposed to NABA and this financial empowerment, portion of, this organization, it equipped me to now be able to share,
Yeah.
right? And, it's the same impact that our leaders can and will have when they embrace, this part of the journey.
Yes, and I want to say this. I I think when I think about financial literacy, I've actually heard that not every accountant is financially literate, like the way you're talking about it, right? For their empowerment, or does not practice building up the skills to build wealth. The way you're discussing. Some years ago, I had started, when I started my entrepreneurial journey, it was actually in a partnership with a few other people that did not work out. But I was, fortunate to have the experience to learn.
Mhm.
But in that, I, actually, my financial literacy was being built around wealth building. So, a couple of the partners were really focused on wealth building. And when we looked around at other programs, what else was out there, when people talked about going into marginalized communities, they talked about, how to you start a checking account, or, how to build a savings or emergency fund. And while those things are very, very important, yes, I feel like people stop there, right? It wasn't exactly wealth building strategies. And so I'm curious about, what would you call wealth building strategies? Like, what are those kinds of things that you were trying to help professionals learn and help marginalized communities learn?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna step back and just comment on something that you said about
Okay.
accountants, right?
Cool. Okay.
Because yeah, the assumption would be that if you're an accountant, that um, financial empowerment, financial literacy, wealth building should be, a part of your practice. That's not necessarily so, right?
Mm.
Because just think about a tax accountant, for example, right? Their job is to ensure um, that you are compliant with, what the government says. You must pay taxes, right? And
Mhm.
so you have to file your return so that you can determine, did you pay enough?
Mhm.
Did you pay too much?
Mhm.
Right, etc. So the job ends there for a lot of tax accountants, right? The job ends there. You were compliant, you paid your taxes, whatever you owed, you paid, or you got a refund, right? But, you know, if we're thinking about legacy, wealth building, we have to think beyond that. So when you get that refund, what's next?
Mhm.
Right? What do you do with it? Is it the opportunity to just go wild and hey, and let me say this. My teaching is never around scarcity and
Mm,
that you're not that you should not have fun
right.
because what's the point of it, right?
Mhm,
However, what I teach is that it's important um that we're good stewards, that we're careful and we're clear on where every dollar is going,
mhm.
and that we also think about, I'm going to scripture now. Is that okay?
That's okay.
If we also think about, one of my favorite scriptures is a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And so if we don't learn how to manage what it is that we have, we make it, manage it, and then we need to multiply it, right? So that
Mhm,
we can have something to leave, to pass on, right? And we're not just passing on dollars, we're passing on knowledge as well. Because
mhm,
if we were to ourselves do a good job in being good financial stewards, and we pass on the inheritance to the children, and it's just a financial inheritance, a money inheritance,
mhm,
and they don't have the learnings and the teachings of being good stewards themselves, what's the
mhm.
point?
Right. Right.
Right. And so, that is how we need to, embrace our journey as financial stewards, is that we have a responsibility. We
Mhm,
have a responsibility to God, we have a responsibility to ourselves, and we have a responsibility to those who we serve, including
mhm,
our families, our children, right? That
mhm.
we're gonna, pass on that inheritance to. I'm not sure. I don't remember what your initial question was, so I don't
That
know if
was
I answered.
fine. Yes, you answered it just quite well. And this while you were talking, I was thinking about, yeah, but there are people, let's just say people take on that they say, yes, I understand that I'm responsible. I want to. But I have a money story that keeps me fearful. I don't even want to look at it. What do you say to that person? Like, I don't want to look at the funds coming in, the funds going out, like paying that much attention to it. Um, I find that there are people, I've felt this myself, right, that have felt just a nasty feeling in my body whenever it came to budgeting, to I budget, right? But I want to say I want to budget once and say that's it. I don't want to look at it
Right.
again.
Put it on the shelf.
Right, exactly. What do you say to
Yeah.
people who have those kinds of money stories?
Yeah, and many of us do, right?
Mhm,
Because if we just go back to what I was saying before, we weren't taught, and some of us were even taught negative things about money, right?
mhm,
Money is the root of all evil. No, it's
mhm,
not. It's the love of money, and it's how you associate with money. Money is a tool,
mhm,
that can do great things. It's not just about personal gain, but it's also
mhm,
about community transformation.
mhm,
So just think about, whenever those feelings, come up, just think about your responsibility.
mhm,
Honestly, like I am a steward of whatever resources that God has blessed you with, right?
mhm,
Financial resources being one of them. And because it doesn't feel good doesn't mean that you should not embrace it, that you should not attack it, right? That you
mm,
should not address whatever the issues are. Just think about, I could tell you about my weight loss journey, right?
mhm,
I For years, we I grew up slender, but kids, especially COVID, right? We were
Mhm.
all at home and I put on all this weight and I wanted to lose it. And I spoke about it and then I put it down, right? Like it's just too much. It was
Mhm.
just too much work,
Mhm.
right, in order to get it done. But it wasn't until I broke through that and determined and looked at the other side, right? If I put in the work, what could it look like on the other side? That's
Mhm.
when I was able to truly, push through and develop the discipline,
Mhm.
right? And by the way, last year I did 75 hard
Mhm.
and was able to lose 27 pounds during the
Oh,
process, right?
bravo.
It's a yes, I'm really proud of that. It's
Mhm.
same thing that we have to do mentally
Mhm.
in terms of our finances. It doesn't
Mhm.
feel good, but what is on the other side of that,
Mhm.
right? For me, for my family, for my community, for the next generation,
Mhm.
I have to make sure that I equip myself, right? And that I develop certain practices so that, it's um what do I want to say? Your cup is overflowing so
Yeah.
that then you get to be generous. You get to,
Mhm.
be generous with your knowledge and with your resources.
Yes, yes, understood. And there are some people who are generous, and they don't have a lot of resources and a lot of savings or looking at profit or legacy, and they are generous. But I do understand where you're coming from, right? For our economic empowerment, if we want to leave legacies, if we want to change the gaps in the generations to come in our families, and for other community members, for some, right, who are focused on that, we need to set an intention. That's what I hear you say when you talked about doing 75 hard, right? You set an intention and you did it hard because you had a vision for what was next. Now,
Absolutely.
now, just like with weight loss, right? I'm sure, well, I don't know if you tried before and didn't get
Absolutely. Many
started.
times.
Oh, well, okay. So what was the difference for you in that situation when you said, no, I'm going to do it now? Like, what was different? Because I think people
Yeah.
have to tap into that.
Yeah. Um, it's definitely it's a mindset shift
Hmm.
that has to come from it's a desire, right?
Hmm.
It's a desire that you have to then couple with discipline. How do you get it? How do you get it? You have to you have to look to the future.
Hmm. Hmm.
You have to it's a matter of just making a determination that this desire that I have can be realized,
Hmm.
right? But it requires me to move away from the comfort zone that I've been sitting in
Hmm.
for so long that has now become a habit,
Hmm.
right? And so it's hard to pinpoint where it comes from, like how to really pull it out. But um, it's a desire
Hmm.
coupled with this determination and discipline.
Yes.
That's the
And
best way I can put it.
I understand. Yeah, I understand. I just, I asked what it was for you because I think people can learn from people's stories. For me, I remember a time when I decided, well, executed on what I decided around my health because I had gotten diagnosed, I had a diagnosis um, of a chronic illness that could be reversed actually with diet and exercise.
Mhm.
And while I was prior to that saying, oh, I really want to, live healthier, my behavior did not
Right.
align with that. So wanting to live, right? Like wanting, because actually when I got the diagnosis, I was like, how did this happen? Right? And it actually was during COVID. That's why this came to mind because you mentioned
Hmm.
COVID.
Hmm.
And I knew that I had to start with one, getting some information uh, of how to live differently. Immediately went on to websites to get more information about how I could reverse this. And then talk to people who had a similar illness, and then I did get myself an accountability partner for some steps I was going to take. So I decided on a few steps I was going to take, just a few. I knew they were going to be hard, right? Anything related, especially with exercise, right? Like anything related to exercise, or even changing what you eat or how you eat or how much you eat can signal in your brain that, oh, this is going to be painful. I knew that in the beginning. However, I said this time it felt like life and death for me.
Yeah.
It felt like
Yeah.
life and death because it was something that was accumulated and had an impact on my life over time. And I could not go back there.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
for me, I didn't have a diagnosis.
Hmm.
Um, what I had was, again, a desire for, I remember I was looking at pictures from the past
Mm.
and looking at the current. And to be honest, I didn't like what I saw,
Okay.
right? I got to the place and I realized that, my family, they weren't comfortable with what they saw either, right?
Mm.
They were kind, but my kids, I remember them coming to me and saying, Mom, we can help you.
Mm.
They wanted to be my coach,
Mm.
right? And I tried it, but again, I quit.
Mm.
That sat in the back of I think that's what did it. That sat in the back of my mind. And I remember thinking, do I want my children
Mm.
to grow up with the idea or the thought that my mom's a quitter?
Mm.
Like, what am I teaching them?
Mhm.
Right? Because they started the journey with me.
Mm.
I quit on them and then they eventually quit on me because they said mom's not really serious. Right.
Mm.
And that sat with me for a little bit. And I said, this is not how I want my kids to view me, life, things that they set out to do in life, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so it just came to a point that I said, I have to teach a better lesson.
Okay. Okay.
And so I, began the journey.
Mhm.
And, normally when you're ready, you know, what did they say? When the student is ready, the teacher would appear.
Yes.
exactly what happened for me, because a friend, just as I was on the journey, a friend reached out on social media and said, I want to do 75 hard and I want some accountability partners. Who's in?
Hmm.
And I remember going to him because I thought 75 hard is too hard, right?
Okay.
And I said, maybe next time
Mm,
you do it, hit me up. And he was just like, okay. That
mm.
didn't sit well with me. Like, he didn't even try to convince, right? And I sat with that overnight, and the spirit was like, no, you're gonna do it. And I went back the
Mm,
next day and I was like, I'm in. And he was like, what changed? I'm
mm.
in. And so I did the 75 days, and my kids, when they saw, they were like, Mom, you're doing it.
Yes.
Mom, they got excited. You're
Yes.
doing it, right?
Hmm.
So as leaders, so let's go back to our leaders now.
Yes.
Just imagine when you embrace this, right?
Hmm.
And your family can see the change. The people who you serve, your coworkers,
Hmm.
your employees, right, can see a difference. Just imagine the inspiration that you can be for them.
Yes.
And so that's why you should do it.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Yes, that is powerful. Right. So we're going to come to that conclusion in many different ways, right? Mine was health related. Yours was health related too, but you also wanted your children, you know that you're a role model for them. You
Yes.
know that you're a leader in your family, right? They're always watching you, and you did not want to leave them with that legacy or with that lesson,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And, I was thinking about the 75 hard, right? So it's 75 days hard. I'm thinking, I'm sure it was very hard in the beginning and got easier as you moved along with the discipline every day. And
Became
that may,
habit.
right, it became habit. And that's what we need, right? We need to retrain our brains to create new habits when it comes to ethical financial decision making, resource allocation, and wealth building. Yes. And so we're going to bring this right back to finance, right? And wealth building. What are some first steps to sustainable wealth building or ethical financial decision making?
Yeah. Um, so we have to have resources in the first place in order to manage the resources, right?
Okay.
So income, right? Income. So I
Okay.
won't go into that. But once we have the income, we're making the money.
Hmm.
Now, as stewards, we need to manage the money, right? And so
Hmm.
you started with, some of the basic things, how to balance your checkbook, making sure that you have a budget,
Hmm.
so that money coming in cannot be less than money going out, or
Hmm.
we have an issue. I also take it a step further that I love to think about your budget as a zero-based budget, meaning
Okay.
money coming in needs to be allocated somewhere, right?
Mm.
So if you have 5,000 coming in and
Hmm.
your expenses are 4,000, don't just leave the other 1,000 hanging, right?
Mm.
What's going to happen to that, right?
Hmm.
Do you have debt? Is it going to go towards paying down debt? Do you not have a nest egg? Do you not have an emergency fund? So is it going to go towards that,
Hmm.
right? You have to assign every dollar, and it could be for towards your next vacation, so
Okay.
that that next vacation is not put on a credit card, right?
Mm.
So it's not to say that you're in shackles where you can't, you know, um, you can't have entertainment, but you have to plan for it, right?
Hmm.
So those are the basic things. But then now we have to think about the future, right? We have to think about the future. And then we have to also think about that legacy and that inheritance that I spoke about with that scripture, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, how are we going to move from making the money
Mm-hmm.
to managing the money and to multiplying the money, right? Because if we go back to the Bible again, where and we look at the parable of talents,
Mm-hmm.
right? They were all given a measure of talents that they needed to do something with,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so a couple of them went ahead and they doubled.
Mm-hmm.
They doubled the money. One of them was like, oh no, I'm just going to bury it, right? We can't just bury it. And I could give an example um, because money, it goes both ways, right? There's lack of it. And sometimes people have so much and don't know what to do with it either,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because I had a client who had a lot of money just sitting in a no interest bank account,
Mm-hmm.
being afraid to let go, do something with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and so that could be an issue as well. Like as something as simple as a high yield interest account to put, a portion of it in
Mm-hmm.
can help you multiply it,
Multiple.
right?
Right.
And so we
Mm-hmm.
have to seek ways we and really do our due diligence in terms of getting financial support
Mm-hmm.
to do the right thing with the money. Once we manage it well, then what next? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a whole other conversation. But we have to think about just the present
Mm-hmm.
and really look at, the long term
Mm-hmm.
and the impact that we can have when we do the right thing with money.
All right, excellent. And I'm thinking there's somebody on here listening who says all I have extra is $10. And then there's somebody who has 100 or, $7.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So I'm glad
mhm,
you brought that up, right? Because how many and sometimes we need to just get our strength from other people's stories, right? How many
mhm,
stories have you heard of the last penny,
mhm,
$2, $10, and they just had a desire and a determination that I'm going to do more.
mhm.
I'm not going to just stay in survival mode, but, just I'm going to strategically,
Mhm.
consider how can I make better for
Yes.
myself and my family. So it takes us coming out of our comfort zone, our
Mhm,
survival modes, and because let me tell you, we serve a God
mhm,
who has blessed all of us with purpose.
mhm.
Let's just say that with purpose. And if we were really to tap into it, there's so much that we could accomplish. And
Mhm.
so it's important that we read, that we listen to other people's stories, and that we know that if it can happen for them, it can happen for us as well.
Yes, yes, indeed. Well, thank you so much for that. Now, I'm thinking about our listeners out there who are saying, okay, I have some funds and I do want to start with something that's sustainable around wealth building so I can leave a legacy. I'm sure many have heard, many people actually do. They might invest in real estate, for example, right? Like have that one extra house that's being rented out and that's going to be left to, to the heirs of that person. Are there any other strategies or practical ways people can or practical strategies for sustainable wealth building that you would recommend, somebody could pick up today?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think that life insurance is one of the vehicles that um, a lot of people don't tap into enough and think
Mm-hmm.
about that as that inheritance that you can actually live, right? We know that all of us are going to go at some point, and especially if you start at an early age, your premium can be so low
Mm-hmm.
that you continue to pay on that until that time comes and the next generation gets to benefit from it. Now,
Yes.
again, remember I said we don't just pass on money, but we pass on knowledge as well. So, in the back of your mind, while you have this life insurance that you know your children, or whoever will inherit, it's imperative that you also teach them how do you preserve it and how do you build on it, so that the next generation, your children's children, can
Mm-hmm.
benefit from it as well. So yeah, I would definitely say as a first step, life insurance, talk to a professional
Mm-hmm.
and and pick that up. And then beyond that, is I say speak with, a financial advisor as well, who, and do your due diligence, right? Interview who are you using, who have you used, to make sure that you find, someone who is going to have your best interests at heart and theirs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And definitely look at different vehicles that you can invest in that's gonna support your vision for the future.
Okay, so I hear you. So actually look into life insurance, yes, as a vehicle for leaving sustainable wealth building. And I'm glad you mentioned start young. I just went to an estate planning workshop, and the lawyer who was offering this session said, you can start at 18. You have things to leave to people,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
But it's also important. I, thought about, our oldest grandson is or grandchild is 21. And so I thought, yeah, we have to make sure this person knows. And then the other ones know and their parents know before the others reach 18, right?
yeah,
That this
yeah.
is something that we need to start planning for, that it doesn't have to be painful, right? Like it doesn't have to be like, oh, well, you're just not going to have enough for day to day. The thing is with life insurance in particular, when you go to get life insurance, if you lose that job and you're 50 and you have to go get life insurance, the premium is so much higher.
Than when you were younger. So I'm glad you said about
Hmm.
the job, right? Because a lot of us who are in the corporate environment, a
Hmm.
lot of people, they get life insurance through the job.
Hmm.
When you lose that job, that goes away. So please get your policy on your own
Hmm.
and not through the job, because just imagine what you said. You stay at a job for 20 years, whatever, and you're now out of the job. You're older now. So now that you go to get life insurance on your own, the premium is so much higher. So
Hmm.
please, yeah, consider that
And
as
I
well.
mean hundreds of dollars. Like it could
Yes.
it could be the difference between paying something like $40 a month
Yes.
to
Versus
300
400.
or
Yes.
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 That's real.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Another thing that I wanted to point out before we close out
Hmm.
is you spoke about your 21-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
grandchild, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just imagine him at 21 getting his first job, putting aside $150 a month over
Mm-hmm.
a 40-year period.
Okay.
He can build over $1 million doing that
Mm-hmm.
because, and this is $150 a month.
Mm-hmm.
That's if he doesn't even increase. So just imagine if
Mm.
he now, when he starts earning more money, etc., that he increased it from
Mm-hmm.
that 150. This is something you're going for the long term, right? This is not something where you're just, short term pulling out. Long term, you're putting that aside.
Mm-hmm.
Do the math. It, you know, that can definitely create that generational wealth that we're talking about.
Yes, that's powerful. $150. People can waste
Yes.
that in a day.
Yes, absolutely.
We certainly do.
Absolutely.
We're wasted in a day and easily,
Yes.
at all ages. Oh, wow. Ranelli, this has been powerful. And I hope I've asked you all that you want to share. If you want to share any last comments, any advice for our listeners, please do share that before we close. And then we'll talk about how they can reach you afterwards. So, any final words? Yeah.
Absolutely. I just want to encourage our leaders to just embrace financial literacy.
Hmm.
Embrace it for yourself. Embrace it so that you can be empowered to be that inspiration to others as well, to your family, to your employees, to your coworkers. We just have this social responsibility to be our brother's keepers.
Hmm.
And when we ourselves are empowered, when we're knowledgeable, then we're able to just share that knowledge, right? And I want to just piggyback off what you said, that there are people who are not wealthy, but they're generous, right?
Hmm.
And that's absolutely powerful. But just imagine combining the two,
Hmm.
right? Wealth with generosity. How much more impact, can we have? And so that's how we have to, truly, think about it. You've inspired me to do better, just even talking,
Hmm.
having this
Love it.
conversation.
I
So I
love it.
appreciate you having me here.
Oh, I love it. Are there any resources that you would recommend for further learning? Just any resource. Hmm.
Yeah. So Dave Ramsey, right? I love what he has built. I love the impact that he has. There's some of his mannerism, his teachings that, you know, um, could be a little bit, could rub some folks the wrong way. However, what he teaches works,
Mm,
right? So financial peace might
mm,
be a resource for those who, really want that foundation.
mm.
That might be, he has a podcast that you can listen to as well. And I'm getting ready to start my YouTube channel.
Great.
And so please search for
Mhm.
me in the next 30 days or so. I'm not sure when this is going to air, but
Okay.
yeah, just, search for me. And I'm going to, start really embracing what God has called me to do
Mm.
and, use my voice more.
I love that. I love that. So we are going to look up Dave Ramsey and it's a book, The
Okay,
Financial
so he
Piece,
has a book. He has tons of
several
books.
books.
A
Hmm.
great book to look at is Total Money Makeover. That is something that people can look at for sure.
Okay,
Mhm.
wonderful. And he's on online.
Yeah,
And we are going to be looking for will it just be Ranelli?
yeah, it will be Dr. Ranelli.
Dr.
Yeah, so you
Ranelli
could just look for Dr. Ranelli on YouTube.
on YouTube. Yes.
Yes.
Very good. And in the meantime, I believe you're on LinkedIn. We can find
I'm
you
on
there.
LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, at Dr. Ranelli Williams, in all places.
Oh, wonderful. And you're somebody who did it right. Unlike some other people on this podcast right now. But I want to thank you over and over and over again. Financial concerns, financial is a major issue across the globe. Yeah, I wish it wasn't. I really wish it wasn't. So people being empowered and really living in their full humanity um, is tied to it. Like you started this episode, you talked about the fact that we can reduce stress by getting these
Yes.
things in order, knowing where things are, and building for the future. So this is, this is unduplicatable, right? This information that we're having around elevating our own humanity, because I know anything that reduces my stress helps me show up as my best self.
There you go.
Yes. And
Absolutely.
I don't want to return to, over and over and over again to survival mode, to trying to figure out how to, pay Peter, rob Peter to pay Paul, I think is the saying,
Yes.
you know, or being up for several months and then trying to figure it all out again, for several months does keep people away from being who they want to be in the world, right? Because you have to be selfish to look internally to figure things out. And I know I'm talking more for business owners, but I do think about people who are taking the income that they do make and trying to impress people, right? By having elaborate events that they may create a memory. Yes, they may create a memory, but may not actually lead right to what we've been talking about today, lead to legacy building. Now, if you take care of the legacy first, hey, have all the parties you want, I believe. But if you have the party at the detriment of putting things aside for you and your family or for your financial stewardship, I wonder how that contributes to other people's stress.
Hmm.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
their ability to show up as their best selves. Well, Dr. Ranelli, thank you over and over and over again. And I'm so thankful for our Rooted to Thrive tribe. I've been saying that, I don't know, I'm stumbling over it, but I like it. Like Rooted to Thrive
I love it too.
tribe, right? Thank you for being here, being willing to grow. And of course, as always, before you go, please leave a comment, subscribe, share this episode, and thank you again for listening to Rooted to Thrive.
Thanks for having me.